Daf Yomi, Tractate, Menachot, page 48, starting with 47b at the bottom for context. Tanu Rabbanan, the last line on 47b. Tanu Rabbanan. Shachat shnei kvolsim alav hachalois moishech shtayim mehen umenifon. The Gemara cites another discussion concerning the sheep and loaves of Shavuot. Yadit or Yadit, whatever. Okay, the sages taught in a Braita, if one slaughtered the 2 sheep as required, but they were accompanied by 4 loaves rather than the requisite 2 loaves, he draws 2 of the loaves from the 4 and waves them together with the sheep. Okay, now it takes us to 48 on top. והשאר נחלס בפדיון אמרו הרבנון כמדרב חיסדו הדלוי כרבי, and the rest of the loaves are permitted to be eaten through redemption. May it happen now. The sages said the following before Rav Chizda. This Braita is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who holds that the slaughter of the sheep grants the loaves inherent sanctity, and in this case 2 of the loaves have inherent sanctity, but it is not known which ones. As if the Brisa is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, since he says that the slaughter of the sheep consecrates the loaves with inherent sanctity, when the Braita states that he redeems the loaves, when does he redeem them? The process of redemption would be to place all 4 loaves in front of him and state that whichever 2 of the loaves do not have inherent sanctity are redeemed for money. If he redeems them outside of the temple courtyard, since it is written, and the priest shall wave them with the bread of the first fruits for a wave offering before the Lord with the 2 lambs. Leviticus 23:20. He disqualifies the 2 loaves that possess inherent sanctity by causing them to leave the courtyard, at which point they are no longer before the Lord. Conversely, if he redeems them inside the courtyard, once the 2 loaves that do not possess inherent sanctity are redeemed, he violates the prohibition against bringing non-sacred items into the temple courtyard. Amar lehu Rav Chizdo le'oilam kerabi uporik lehu gavai v'chulin mimela kol havion. Because it said to them, actually the Braita is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, and one redeems the loaves inside the courtyard. Nevertheless, it is not considered to be a violation of the prohibition against bringing non-sacred items into the courtyard, because the non-sacred loaves come into the courtyard by themselves, meaning they were already there when they became non-sacred and were not actively brought into the courtyard in their non-sacred state. Amar le Ravina Ravashi, Ve'atanya kishuhu podan, ein podan ela bachutz. Ravina said to Ravashi, but isn't it taught in the Braita with regard to this very case? When he redeems the loaves, he may redeem them only outside the courtyard. This contradicts Rav Chizda's claim that according to Rav Yehuda Hanasi, One redeems the loaves inside the courtyard. Havadeh Rabbi Elazar ben Shimoni. Di Rabbi Yivson Elohu Beyoitze. Rav Ashi answers, this bride is certainly in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, said Rabbi Shimon. Because if it were in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, when he brings the loaves outside the courtyard, he thereby disqualifies them by causing them to leave the courtyard. Mihad Itmarto Dad Shishakata al Shmonim Chalos. Chizki Amal Kochu Arboim Mitorch Shmoidim Rabbi Yochanan Amal Kochu Arboim Mitorch Shmoidim. Rav son of Rav said to Rav Ashi, let us say the rise which states that if the sheep of Shavuot are slaughtered with 4 loaves instead of 2, 2 of the 4 are invested with inherent sanctity. Is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan that was stated with regards to a thanks offering that one slaughtered accompanied by 80 loaves rather than required 40. In that case, Chizkiah says 40 of the 80 loaves are consecrated, and Rabbi Yochanan says not even 40 of the 80 are consecrated. Vilav mitmarla Omer bezera kol moidim megadom lekati arboim mitoch shmoinim. The Gemara answers, wasn't it stated with regard to this dispute that Rabbi Zera says everyone, even Rabbi Yochanan, concedes that in a case where the individual bringing the offering said, let 40 of the 80 loaves be consecrated, that 40 are consecrated. Here too, one can say that the bride is referring to a case where one said, let 2 of the 4 loaves be consecrated. Tani, Tirata, Rabbi Yochanan. Shachat arba kavasim al shnei chalois moishech shnai mehen vezoarek daman shlo lishmon. Vezoarek daman shlo lishmon. Ay 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 ay. The Gemara starts another discussion concerning the sheep and loaves Shavuot. Rabbi Chanina Tirata. I don't remember seeing him before. Rabbi Chanina Tirata. Ta de Braita before Rabbi Yochanan. If one slaughtered 4 sheep for Shavuot, rather than required to accompany by 2 loaves, he draws 2 of the sheep out of the 4 and sprinkles their blood, not for the sake of the sheep of Shavuot. He then sprinkles the blood of the other sheep for the sake of the sheep of Shavuot. As if you do not say this, but rather require him to first sprinkle the blood of the 2 sheep for their own sake, then you have caused the loss of the latter 2 sheep, since they were previously fit to have their blood sprinkled on the altar for the sake of the sheep of Shavuot, and were disqualified from this status when the blood of the other 2 sheep was sprinkled for that purpose. They are no longer fit to have their blood sprinkled even for the sake of a different offering. Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbi Chanina Tarta. Rabbi Yochanan said to Chanina Tarta, lai 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 lai. I don't know if he said that, but Rabbi Yochanan said to Chanina Tarta. Yeah. And does the court say to a person, arise and sin in order that you may gain? Is it proper for the priest to sprinkle the blood of the first pair not for their own sake, so that the second pair will remain fit? That's none. But didn't we learn in the Mishnah, in Zvachim 77a, that Tanaim disagree concerning this matter? The Mishnah teaches in the case of the limbs of a sin offering, whose flesh is eaten by priest and may not be burned on the altar, that were intermingled with the limbs of the burnt offering, which are burned on the altar. Rabbi Eliezer says the priest shall place all the limbs above on the altar, and I view the flesh of the limbs of the sin offering above the altar until they are pieces of wood burned on the altar, not an offering. And the rabbis say one should wait until the form of all the intermingled limbs decays, and they will all go out to the place of burning in the temple courtyard, where all disqualified offerings of the most sacred order are burned. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan continued, according to your opinion, why do the rabbis say that the mixture is burnt? Let the court say to the priest, instead, arise in sin by burning all limbs on the altar, including the limbs of the sin offering, in order that you may gain by performing the mitzvah of sacrificing the limbs of the burnt offering. Rabbi Chanina tried to answer Rabbi Yochanan, we do say, arise and sin with the sin offering, in order that you may gain with regard to a sin offering, since it is the same type of offering. Similarly, one may sin with regard to the sheep of Shavuot, in order to gain with regard to the other sheep brought for the same offering. We do not say, arise and sin with the sin offering, in order that you may gain with regard to a burnt offering. Therefore, the rabbis prohibit burning the limbs of the sin offering on the altar in order to allow for the burning of the limbs of the burnt offering. לפני זמן בין לחץ זמן אדם יזורק ובוסו Rabbi Yochanan asked Rabbi Chanina, and does the court actually say arise and sin in order that you may gain, a case where the sin and the gain are with regard to one another? But isn't it Tana Braita concerning the case of the two sheep of Shavuot, where one slaughters them not for their own sake, or when he slaughtered them either before their time, meaning before Shavuot, or after the time, that the blood shall be sprinkled, although it shall be sprinkled for the sake of a peace offering, and the meat shall be eaten. V'im hoisa Shabbos li'izroik. V'im zorak hutza lehaktir imun. Rabbi Yochanan continued, and if the festival was on Shabbat, one may not sprinkle the blood, the sacrificial portions may not be burned on the altar, and the meat may not be eaten. This is because the improper slaughter of the sheep disqualified them as communal offerings, whereas individual offerings may not be sacrificed on Shabbat. But if the priest nevertheless sprinkled the blood of these sheep on Shabbat, the offering is accepted, and that is permitted to burn the sacrificial portions on the altar in the evening, as after the conclusion of Shabbat, they may be eaten. The meat may be eaten. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan concluded his proof. But according to your opinion, why is it not permitted to sprinkle blood on Shabbat? Let the court say, arise and sin by sprinkling the blood of these offerings, in order that you may gain by being able to burn the sacrificial portions in the evening and then eat their meat. Amod chet b'Shabbat. Kedei shetisku b'Shabbat. Amrinan amod chet b'Shabbat. Kedei shetisku b'chol. Rabbi Chanina answered, we do say arise and sin on Shabbat in order that you may gain on Shabbat, but we do not say arise and sin on Shabbat in order that you may gain on a weekday. Uvitarti milama yatnan chovi shel trumo shenismucha begas hadyoino utachtoino chulin tmein moide Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yehoshua shim yochel lahatzil mimena l'revis betochas yatzil v'im lav Rabbi Eliezer omer. Okay. Gemara asks, and is it so that with regard to two separate matters, the court does not say that one should sin with regard to one in order to gain with regard to the other? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah in Trumot 8:9, in the case of a barrel of wine that is Truma that broke in the upper section of the wine press, and in the lower section of the wine press there's non-sacred impure wine, and the wine that is truma will flow into the lower press and become impure. Eliezer and Yehoshua both concede that if one is able to rescue even part of the core log of the wine that is truma in a pure vessel so that it remains in ritual purity, he should rescue it, even if in the process the rest of the wine that is truma will mix with the non-sacred wine. This will cause the owner of a financial loss because the wine that is truma will become impure, causing the entire mixture to become prohibited for consumption. But if not, one cannot save any of the. Meaning, if it's not enough, not enough what? It's not enough to save any of the wine that is truma. You have to distill it up. If one does not have any pure vessels in which to collect it, Rabbi Yehoshua says, return to 48b, tered b'titzmei, al yitmenu b'yad. Rabbi Yehoshua omer af yitmenu b'yad. Truma wine should be allowed to descend and become impure on its own, ruining the sacred wine in the lower places. But one should not render it impure through direct action by catching it in the entire vessel, in the impure vessel, even though catching it would prevent the wine that is truma from mixing with his impure, non-sacred wine. And Rabbi Yehoshua says, since the wine that is truma will become impure by any event, one may even render it impure through his direct action in order to save his non-sacred wine. This indicates that according to Rabbi Yehoshua, it is permitted to sin with regard to one matter, meaning the wine that is truma, in order to gain with regard to another matter, meaning the non-sacred wine. We'll stop here and pick it up with 48b in the next video, God willing.